In the middle of Omosi village stood a tree no axe could defeat, and that alone was enough to divide the village. By the time this story truly began, the people who knew the truth about the Acharu tree were already long dead. They were buried quietly, one by one, until no living mouth remained to tell what the tree once meant. The stories were not passed down properly, no warnings were repeated, no lessons were preserved. And so, the new generation of Umosi saw the tree as nothing more than a tree. A very big one, yes, an old one, definitely, but special? No. It was too big for games. That was the first thing everyone knew about it. Its roots did not hide underground like other trees. They rose openly from the earth, thick and twisted, spreading across the village square like the legs of a giant animal lying down. Children tried many times to climb them, slipping and falling, scraping knees and tearing clothes. Even the bravest boys gave up. No one can climb this tree, they said, not even the roots. So they stopped trying. To them, it was just there, right in the middle of the village. They built their lives around it without thinking twice. The market women claimed the space first. Every Eke market day, baskets of tomatoes, pepper, dried fish and cassava were arranged neatly beneath its wide shade. Traders loved the place because the sun could not punish them there. Buyers liked it because it was easy to locate. If you are looking for me, women would say, come to the Acharu tree. Palm wine sellers followed. Men gathered under it in the evenings, sitting on wooden benches, laughing loudly, tapping fresh wine, arguing about politics, football, and village matters. Some drank until they could no longer stand straight. When they finished, they relieved themselves nearby and staggered home without a second thought. The tree remained silent. Children turned it into a playground. They ran around it, played hide and seek behind its thick trunk. Sometimes they scratched their names on its back. Sometimes they tied ropes to it to make swings. No one stopped them. The tree stayed still. Churches arrived later. As churches grew in Umosi, space became a problem. So pastors looked for open areas. The tree's location was perfect, central, spacious, visible. Soon, crusades were held under it. Speakers were tied to its branches. Banners were nailed to its back. People danced, prayed, shouted, fell, and rose again under it. Fire! Fire! Pastors shouted. Amen! The crowd replied. Nobody asked if the tree cared. Funerals followed. When someone important died, tents were set up around the tree. Mourners gathered, cried, ate, drank, and discussed inheritance matters right there. Coffins passed by it. Corpses lay under its shade during final rites. Weddings happened there too. Couples took pictures in front of it. Drummers stood beside it. Guests danced around it. It became everything. Market square, meeting point, church ground, drinking spot. The tree was not just noticed, it was used. And because nothing bad happened, people concluded that nothing ever would. See, villagers said, it's just a tree. The elders who once feared it were gone. The younger ones were too busy surviving to question anything. Then one dry afternoon, something happened. It was not dramatic at first. No thunder, no shout, no warning. A woman selling roasted corn noticed water on the ground. She frowned. Did someone pour water here? She asked. No one answered. She wiped her feet and continued selling. Minutes later, another trader complained that her mat was wet. Then another noticed water dripping from the back. People looked up. The tree was leaking. Not rainwater, not dew. Clear water. Someone laughed. This tree is sweating like a drunk man. Another joked, maybe he drank palm wine last night. They laughed and continued their business. But the water did not stop. It trickled down slowly, soaking the ground beneath the tree. Small puddles formed. Children stepped into it and splashed around. Then Mbeke screamed. She had been limping for years. Everyone knew her limp. She sat near the tree to rest when the water touched her leg. My leg, she cried. People rushed to her. What happened? Did he bite you? Did you step on something? Mbeke stood up suddenly. She froze. Then she took a step. Another. Her limp was gone. Silence fell. People stared. She walked again. No pain, no dragging, no stick. Someone whispered, "What is happening?" The laughter disappeared. That was when the air changed. That was when the tree reminded Umosi that it had never been ordinary. People gathered closer. Some touched the bark. Some washed their hands. Some backed away in fear. Old men who remembered fragments of old stories felt cold suddenly. "This is not new," one muttered. "This has happened before." But before anyone could think deeply, another person shouted, "My back! I can bend!" Another cried, "My chest is free!" Within hours, the story spread through Umosi like wildfire. The tree they had ignored, the tree they had insulted, the tree they had used without respect, it was doing something no one could explain. And as night approached, fear mixed with excitement. People asked questions they had never asked before. What kind of tree is this? Why now? What does it want? The tree stood quietly, water still dripping. By the next hour, the water was gone. Not reduced, not drying slowly, gone. The ground beneath the tree returned to dust. The bark looked dry and ordinary. No crack, no stain, no sign that anything strange had ever happened there. People stood around in confusion. Did we imagine it? Was it a trick of the sun? Maybe someone poured water and we overreacted. No one had answers. By evening, fear gave way to familiarity. And familiarity, as always, bred carelessness. The mats returned, the palm wine jars followed. Children ran again around the roots. Omosi moved on. The tree was forgiven too quickly. By the next market day, the incident had already become a story people laughed about. Life resumed its normal rhythm under the giant tree. But beneath that normalcy was a deeper problem the village had lived with for years, one no one liked to talk about. Umosi was not moving forward. The youths were many, but progress was none. Young men sat under the tree from morning till night, drinking palm wine and arguing about things that never changed. They talked big, promised big, but did nothing. Every plan ended with another cup of wine. Tomorrow we'll start something. Next week I'll travel. Soon things will change. Tomorrow never came. The old men were worse. They had turned the tree into their permanent meeting place. From sunrise, they gathered there with calabashes and cups. They drank until their voices cracked and their eyes turned red. By afternoon, some were already asleep, snoring against the roots. No one challenged them. "They are elders," people said. "Let them rest." But rest was not what they were doing. They drank away wisdom. They drank away responsibility. Village meetings ended without decisions. Matters dragged for months. Disputes were settled halfway and reopened again. Every discussion ended with wine instead of action. Meanwhile, the women carried the village on their backs. They woke before sunrise. They went to the farms. They returned to cook. They went to the market. They counted small profits and stretched them thin. Women traded until their feet swelled. They farmed until their hands hardened. They fed homes while men argued under the tree. "Is this how we will live forever?" some women whispered amongst themselves. Development never came to Umosi. Nearby villages built new schools. Others dug boreholes. Some repaired their roads. Umosi remained the same. The same broken paths, the same leaking roofs, the same arguments under the tree, year after year. Outsiders came and left. "You people have strength," they said, shaking their heads, "but you waste it." No one listened. Under the tree, pastors still preached, crusades still happened, hands were raised, prayers shouted, and offerings dropped into baskets. But after the prayers, nothing changed. Men returned to their wine, youths returned to waiting, women returned to suffering. It was as if something heavy sat on the village, something unseen but stubborn. Some elders noticed it. "This village is stuck," one old man muttered one evening, his voice low. "We move in circles." Another replied, "We pray, but we do not change." They fell silent and drank again. The tree stood above them all, unmoved. It had seen generations pass. It had watched wisdom die with old men and foolishness rise with new ones. It had been respected once, now it was taken for granted. People leaned on its roots while complaining about their lives, never realizing they leaned on something older than their problems. The strange water incident faded completely from conversation. No one asked why it happened. No one asked why it stopped. No one asked why it healed and vanished. Umuosi preferred comfort over questions. And so the tree returned to being just a tree, a shade for laziness, a roof for excuses, a witness to stagnation. But deep in the earth, where the roots spread far beyond what eyes could see, something had already been stirred. The village did not know it yet. They laughed, they drank, they carried on. But Umuosi was standing still. And whatever had shown itself that day beneath the tree had not come by accident. It had only tested the ground. And it was not finished. One day, one of the elder sons returned to Umuosi. His name was Gabriel. He had left the village many years earlier when he was still young, at an age when boys believed the world beyond their village was wider and kinder. Back then, Umuosi had little to offer a restless young man. There were no new opportunities, no progress, and no future anyone could clearly point to. So Gabriel left, like many before him, chasing a life he could not find at home. For years, Umuosi heard almost nothing about him. Some villagers said the city had changed him, others said he would never return, a few even claimed he had forgotten his people completely. In Umuosi, long absence often meant permanent absence. But Gabriel returned. And he returned differently. He came back not as a struggling man looking for help, but as someone who carried confidence in his steps and certainty in his eyes. He introduced himself not with pride, but with calm authority. "I am a pastor," he said simply. Not one who served under another man's church, not one who moved from place to place. He owned his own church. That single fact stirred the village. Women whispered in low voices as they passed his family compound. Men paused their conversations to ask questions. Children stared openly, trying to understand how a boy they barely remembered had become someone important. His family received him with joy and relief. His parents thanked God that their son had returned alive and successful. Neighbors gathered to greet him, studying his face, his speech, and his manner. But Gabriel did not behave like someone who came home to boast. He listened more than he spoke. As they sat together, his family began to tell him about the strange thing that had happened at the tree some months earlier. They spoke about how water had suddenly flowed from the ground near its roots. They explained how people rushed there with cups, calabashes, and buckets. They mentioned how some claimed they felt better after drinking it. They also told him how quickly it ended. How the water dried up, his father said, shaking his head, as if it was never there. They laughed lightly, treating it like a curious memory, something unusual but already forgotten. Gabriel did not laugh. As they spoke, his expression changed. His eyes lowered, his hands rested quietly on his knees. When they finished, the compound fell silent. "That is why I returned," his mother looked at him sharply. "Returned because of the tree?" "Yes," he answered. His father frowned slightly. "What does the tree have to do with you coming home?" Gabriel took a deep breath. "Before I left the city," he said, "I saw something concerning that tree." The mood changed. His family leaned closer. "In my revelations, I was shown things about Umuosi that troubled me. I saw that the village had forgotten something important, and I saw that the tree was at the center of it." No one interrupted him. "I did not come back to visit," he said firmly. "I came back to speak." His mother felt a chill run through her. Speak to who? To the village, to everyone. His father shifted uncomfortably. People have used that tree for many years. Nothing has happened. That is exactly the problem. Something has been happening and no one noticed. They exchanged uneasy glances. "When will you speak?" his mother asked. "When the people gather, when they are ready to listen." Outside the compound, Umuosi remained the same. The large tree still stood at the center of the village, wide and unmoving. Traders still gathered beneath it. Palm wine sellers still rested there. Churches still held programs under its shade. Children still played around its roots. No one knew that a son of the soil had returned carrying knowledge about what the village had long ignored. And no one yet understood that the tree they treated as ordinary was about to be questioned. Gabriel did not waste time after returning to Umosi. He knew that if he delayed, doubt would creep in. People would question his intentions. Some would dismiss him as another preacher looking for attention. Others would warn him to mind his business. So he decided to act. Gabriel announced that he would host a church program in the village. Nothing unusual. Umosi had seen many church programs before. Different churches came and went, preaching, singing, praying, and leaving afterward. The villagers were used to it. Still, some would always attend faithfully. Others would go only to watch. Some would stay for the songs and left before the prayers began. So it was normal to them. This announcement did not raise suspicion. What the villagers did not know was why Gabriel planned to hold the program. Gabriel had already decided that the truth about it would be revealed on the deal day. He did not want people arriving with fear or resistance. He wanted them to come calmly, the way they always did, so they would listen instead of argue. The day the program was supposed to hold arrived. When the day arrived, people gathered under the tree as expected. They came early, filling the space gradually. Some sat down immediately, others stood around, greeting neighbors and exchanging small talk. The elders arrived and took their places. Women arrived in groups. Youths hovered around the edges. The speakers were brought out and placed where they were usually set. Instruments were arranged and tested. Everything was set up for the program to begin. Then rain fell. At first, nobody reacted. It was the usual rain that often fell in the village. People had seen it many times before. No one stood up, no one rushed away. The gathering remained. The rain continued. It was not heavy. There was no strong wind. Still, it did not stop. The ground began to soak. Small pools of water formed where people sat. The equipment stood exposed. Water reached the speakers. The sound cut off. People shifted uneasily. Some stood up and moved aside. Others tried to lift the equipment to safer ground. The instruments were already wet. The rain continued without slowing. The place began to flood. Water spread quickly across the gathering area. The soil could no longer absorb it. The rain that usually passed quietly had turned the ground into mud. The speakers stopped working completely. The instruments could not be used. There was no argument. People began to leave. One after another, villagers picked up their belongings and walked away. Some covered their heads, others moved carefully to avoid slipping. Conversations faded as the area emptied. Within a short time, the place was deserted. The church program did not take place that day. Gabriel was not surprised. When the rain ruined the program, he did not argue with anyone or try to explain. He packed up quietly and returned home with his family. While others complained about the wasted day, Gabriel remained calm. He already knew what was happening. He knew the tree was fighting back. He knew it was reacting because it sensed what had come against it. That night, Gabriel prayed. He did not sleep early. He prayed long into the night, asking for strength and clarity. By morning, his decision had not changed. Instead, it became firmer. The truth could not be delayed again. When the ground dried and the village returned to its normal routine, Gabriel announced another church program for the following week. Again, the message was simple. Again, nothing else was mentioned. The villagers came. They gathered under the same tree just as they always had. The ground was dry. The weather was calm. The speakers walked. Nothing interrupted the gathering this time. When everyone had settled, Gabriel stepped forward. This time, he spoke. He told them plainly that the tree had been fighting. The villagers murmured among themselves. Some laughed lightly, others frowned. But Gabriel continued without raising his voice. He told them the tree had been holding back the progress of the men in the village. He spoke about how the youth struggled year after year without moving forward. He spoke about how the elders spent their days drinking without change. He pointed out how the women carried the weight of farming and trading while development passed the village by. He did not accuse anyone. He spoke calmly. He told them the truth as he knew it. The ancestors, he said, used to worship that tree before religion was introduced into the village. It had been their place of sacrifice, their place of libation, their point of connection. But things had changed. The villagers no longer poured libation there. They no longer made sacrifices. They no longer acknowledged the tree for what it once was. Instead, it had become a place for everything else: markets, palm wine, meetings, and programs. Gabriel said the tree had not been released. It had not been honored. It had not been properly laid to rest. So it remained. And because it remained without purpose, it brought stagnation instead of blessing. He said it no longer brought healing or progress, only bad luck that settled quietly over the village. The gathering grew silent. People looked at one another. Some nodded slowly. Others shifted uneasily. Gabriel did not rush. He let the words sink in. Then he spoke again. He told them there was only one option. The tree had to be cut down. He did not shout. He did not threaten. He said it plainly. That was the only way the village could move forward. And when he finished speaking, the silence that followed was heavier than noise. After Gabriel finished speaking, silence fell over the gathering. It did not last long. Within minutes, murmurs began to rise from different corners of the crowd. At first, the voices were low, careful, almost unsure. Then they grew louder, overlapping one another as people began to speak openly. Some villagers believed Gabriel. Others did not. Those who disagreed were the first to speak. They pointed toward the tree and reminded everyone of how long it had stood there. They spoke about how the tree had helped them in every way they could remember. They said it had sheltered their markets for years. They said women depended on it to sell their goods. They said men depended on it to sell palm wine. They said without the tree, there would be no proper place to gather. One man stood up and said loudly that if the tree was cut, trading would suffer. Another added that events would no longer have a place to hold. Others nodded in agreement. Women joined in, talking about how the tree gave shade during long market days. They argued that removing it would make their work harder. Some said the tree had never harmed them directly and should not be blamed for the problems of the village. The murmuring turned into open argument. Voices rose. People spoke over one another. Those who believed Gabriel tried to respond, pointing out how the village had remained the same for years. They talked about how the youths struggled without progress. They mentioned how men wasted away drinking while women carried the burden of survival. The disagreement grew sharper. Most of the men refused completely. They said the tree would not be cut. They insisted it was too important to the village. Some claimed cutting it would bring worse trouble. Others said no one had the right to destroy something that had become part of their daily lives. The argument nearly turned violent. Men stood up from their seats. Hands were raised. Voices became harsh. A few people moved closer to each other. Tension thick in the air. But Gabriel remained calm. He did not shout. He did not insult anyone. He raised his hand slightly and spoke again, asking for patience. When the noise reduced, he explained further. He repeated his points clearly, giving reasons instead of threats. He reminded them that the village had tried everything else, yet nothing had changed. He spoke slowly, choosing his words carefully. The argument continued, but the tone began to shift. At that moment, the elders of the land stood up. Their presence alone quieted the crowd. They listened to both sides. They allowed people to speak until there was nothing new left to say. When the arguments finally died down, the elders spoke among themselves briefly. Then one of them addressed the village. After considering everything, the elders decided that the tree would be cut. A date was set. The decision was final. The day finally came. From early morning, the people of Umosi gathered around the tree. Men, women, elders, youths, and children all stood at a distance watching. Some came with folded arms. Some came whispering. Some came silent, unsure of what they were about to witness. Prayers were said. The elders spoke first, asking for protection and peace. Gabriel stood quietly among them. When the prayers ended, the men stepped forward with axes and machines. Everything had already been agreed upon. The date had been set. There was no more debate. The machines were prepared. As the men positioned themselves and turned on the equipment, the first cut was made. Immediately, something unexpected happened. Water began to rush out. Not a small trickle, not a slow leak. Water burst from the tree, flowing steadily onto the ground. The crowd gasped. People stepped back in shock. Some shouted, others stood frozen, staring at what their eyes could not fully understand. Then someone spoke. "This is the water," a woman said loudly. "The same water." Murmurs spread through the crowd. People remembered. They remembered the water that had flowed months ago. They remembered how sick people had gathered there. They remembered how some had recovered. The memory returned all at once. Without waiting for permission, some villagers stepped forward and drank the water. Almost immediately, cries filled the air. People shouted that pains were gone. Some said they could stand again. Others said sickness left their bodies. Those who had been weak began to move freely. The crowd grew restless as one testimony followed another. Word spread quickly. People ran to neighboring villages to announce what was happening. Before long, visitors arrived. They came with sick wives. They brought sisters, parents, and family members who had been ill for years. They carried them. They supported them. Everyone drank from the water, and everyone received. The water was enough. It flowed freely, serving everyone who came. There was no struggle. There was no shortage. People drank, washed, and gave thanks. The same tree accused of holding back destiny was now releasing healing without discrimination. Then slowly, the water reduced. It did not stop suddenly. It simply died down. The flow weakened until it became a trickle, and then nothing. Silence returned. The crowd stood still. Confusion spread across Umosi. The villagers looked at one another, unsure of what to say. The tree had shown power. The miracle was clear. Yet the words Gabriel had spoken still echoed in their minds. This same tree had been accused of holding the destiny of the village. The people did not know what to believe anymore. Some argued that the tree should be left alone. Others wondered why such power had remained hidden for so long. Some questioned whether the tree was a blessing or a burden. No one had answers. The axes were lowered. The machines were turned off. No one touched the tree again. Gabriel stood among them, silent. He had said what he needed to say. He had done what he came to do. But now the village stood at a place even he did not expect. With no more words to offer, Gabriel left Umosi. He returned to the city. Life in the village continued. The tree remained standing. Till today, the people of Umosi still do not know whether Gabriel's prophecy about the tree was true or not.